We talk about AI a lot, and when it comes to use cases, people look at ChatGPT or what search results they might be getting at some point. You're going a lot deeper with this technology to actually harness the technology in procurement for weaponry. How is it changing the way that we look at weapons procurement?
Yeah, I think absolutely we've got to be using AI, right? Our adversaries are going to be using it. It's like any other evolutionary or revolutionary technology. We've got to take advantage of it. And that's true in our weapon systems. It's also true in the way that we buy things. With our weapon systems, really the power of AI is in our data, right? And the major initiatives we've got underway now are really freeing our data from the siloed systems that they exist in today so that we can apply these AI tools and we can give our commanders the ability to make faster, better decisions on the battlefield and outpace our adversaries.
Now, is the Pentagon, I don't know if you can answer this, are you working on, do you have your own AI? Is there like a DoD LLM out there that you're using, or are you taking from private companies who are expanding this technology?
Yeah, really what we're doing with our reform efforts with procurement is looking to leverage commercial as much as we can, right? So anything from AI to cloud technology, communications capabilities, because that gives us sort of a market efficiency in driving our costs down so that we can get this capability out more quickly with the budget that we have. So absolutely, we're doing that.
Fascinating. A lot of people watch the United States, as the president described it, knock the lights out in Venezuela a couple of weeks ago. This brought to light our ability to affect the battlefield using cyber. I don't know if you were part of that or if AI was part of that, but this is a new wrinkle on the way that we're approaching, for instance, an invasion or an occupation.
It certainly is. The threat environment is incredibly complex. You talk about cyber, there's also space, there's electronic warfare, as we're seeing in Ukraine. All these different dimensions are coming together very quickly. And another challenge, and back to AI, is that the amount of data that is out there that needs to be processed and understood, both for ourselves to be able to conduct operations, but to understand our adversaries. We need to move through those cycles faster than we ever have before. That's really why our buying practices needed to fundamentally change in a new environment.
Is the end game no people on the battlefield or in the airspace?
It's absolutely not. No. We absolutely need human judgment and experience involved in complex decision making.
So this is to augment what our troops are already doing.
It absolutely is. If you think about the cognitive burden on our commanders, on our soldiers, our troops right now, in terms of all the information coming at them, the decisions that they have to make increasingly faster, AI advanced tools are to enable them to do those jobs better, to clear the battlefield for them, if you will, so that they can make those human-based judgments consistent with our laws and our values.
When you start talking about the use of AI in the battlefield as opposed to in the procurement space, we're hearing wild stories about even what the F-47 with the ability to fly with its own fleet of drones. You have almost your own squadron with one man in the cockpit of an airplane. They can then communicate with ground forces, which is talking to people back home. To what extent is AI stitching all of this together?
It's AI. It's also a lot of other commercial tools that you may be familiar with.
Yeah.
You know, if you think of your phone or your tablet, it's on Wi-Fi, it's on cellular, it goes back to Wi-Fi, very seamless. When you think about the apps that are on your tablet, how they can seamlessly work together, share and exchange data. They're simple and easy to use. Like, that is the experience that we're delivering to our soldiers to enable them to conduct their missions effectively, the same as you or I use that kind of technology in everyday life.
Interesting. And to the extent that you're working with private contractors now, are you using the same companies that we're familiar with? I mean, do you get on the phone with CrowdStrike or Palo Alto, or are these defense contractors that are not household names?
No, we work with many different companies, increasingly more commercial-based companies. I mean, obviously we've got a unique mission within the Army, within the Pentagon, but the concerns that we have, over security, for example, banks have similar concerns. Internet service providers have similar concerns, and so by and large, we're working with commercial entities and tailoring what we need for our unique military operations.
Really interesting. Is it your job to buy Blackwells and Rubins? Do you have to go to NVIDIA and get these same AI chips that the private sector is is drooling over?
Yeah, absolutely. We need AI chips, right?
Huh.
The question is whether do we need them, inherently within the
Yeah.
military, or can we take advantage of those in a commercial setting?
Okay.
There are circumstances where we need capability, that's disconnected from the cloud or from anywhere else. We have a lot of contingencies that we need to plan for, and we're going to need chips like that in order to enable disconnected operations on the battlefield.
That's fascinating. So that means the Pentagon has data centers, is what you're saying.
We have less data centers than we used to, right?
Really?
Yes, we do.
Because
Absolutely.
they are they're more efficient, or because you don't need as many?
Because
I guess that's the same question.
Because commercial providers can do that with some added layers of security. Really, what I'm talking about is when we are completely disconnected, we have no way of getting back to a data center, whether it's ours or commercial. We still need to give our soldiers the ability to conduct their missions and do that in a digital fashion.
Well, you've got an interesting situation. As I mentioned, you're executive director, U.S. Army Transformation and Training Command, knowing that the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has promoted reforms in acquisitions and procurement. What's it like still for you to walk into a room of top brass and maybe some of the gray hairs who are in the Pentagon to say that we don't need this weapon system to go to war maybe with China. We need this piece of software to protect ourselves. Are you being well received?
Absolutely.
So they know that this is required.
The reform efforts that I'm seeing, and I've got more than 20 years of experience working in procurements. I mean, this is really a once-in-a-generation change in the way that we're doing business, right? We used to not buy software anywhere like the rest of the world does. And today, increasingly, we're doing kind of the Silicon Valley model. We've got a minimum viable product, getting it in hands of our soldiers as quickly as possible, iterating, improving it, and then scaling it immediately. It's vastly different than the way that we built systems in the past.
Yet we have a trillion, or I guess if the president gets his way, $1.5 trillion defense budget for the first time. Is that because we need all of the above? I would expect that technologies like these would be streamlining, creating efficiencies, and maybe making defense less expensive.
Yeah, I can't speak to the entire top line increase. I can tell you in the area that I work within information technology, there's a concept of tech debt, which is that you are so far in the past, in the core technology that you had, that you really need to reset yourself up to a modern level.
Said.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. Tell me more about that.
So, the Army digitized for the first time in the late 1990s. This is the same time the rest of the world was entering the digital era. The rest of the world has moved on. By and large, our soldiers, the equipment that they're using still has a lot of its capabilities that are rooted in that time.
Sure.
If you consider an 18-year-old who walks into one of our recruiting stations today,
they don't recognize it.
The iPhone is older than that person, right?
Wow.
So that's the scale of the gap that we're closing.
Don't say that. And then they sit down in front of this old DOS machine and they say, how do I work this, right?
So not for much longer.
Okay. Well, how much longer? What's your timeline and what are your goals?
Yeah, so our goal is to rapidly advance the state of technology. As I say, retire all of that tech debt, get modern capabilities that you're familiar with from your phone, your tablet, give our soldiers the same kinds of things, because the underlying portions of that technology, the availability of the data, the ability to work together, it already exists commercially. We've got some unique missions, but we're starting from the point of commercial. That's what's going to let us scale fast.
Wow.